Welcome. All right, so first off is public comment, but there will be an additional time after for public comment after we've heard Chris Haggerty, our surveyor, with all the new information that has come to light. But if you wanted to share a public comment now, that is fine. Do we have any public comments at this moment? Okay, moving on. Review minutes from the meeting of January 23rd, 2024. Any additions, deletions, corrections?
I move that we approve the minutes of.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of the January 23rd, 2024 meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining because I was not in attendance at that meeting, so for the record show. All right, so the next meeting has already been scheduled for Tuesday, February 13th. That's the day before Valentine's Day at 7 p.m. Is that still a good time for everyone? And Kendra, will you share briefly with us? Should we share Mary's comment that it may be more difficult for her to get here?
I don't know if anybody was able to see the email, but Mary LaFave emailed saying that she's one of our other committee members who's unable to make it today. She's taken a new job and is doing more nursing nights and is unable to make a lot of the rest of the meetings, but for a period of time, at least, it sounds like. And so she mentioned that she was very fine with if we decided it wasn't great for her to stay on the committee since she can't be as here as she would like to be. And left it up to us to kind of decide. My personal position is I think that she should remain on the committee. She creates a different viewpoint with her experience. And so I think that she should remain and share information as she can or attend as she can, but others on the committee have different positions.
And we don't know if you have any comments. I'll go first. I applaud her new job. I'm happy for her. I think that the committee that we have is working really well. And I think that it would, if a new person did come on, I feel it would take a while for that person to become up to speed, but I'm just one voice. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I agree. I agree. And she does comment.
Yes.
And,
So as Fran said, in our emails and when we get new information and data, she's commenting regularly. So she still is an active member. And I like the perspective that Mary brought. She's always advocating for the disabled and the people that don't move around as freely as some others. So I like that she brings that voice to our table and she's constantly reminding us. So I'm happy going forward, knowing that she may have some absenteeism, but we want to make sure that Kendra and I talked about it. We want to make sure that everyone on the committee is okay with it.
Yeah, and I think it's really her to decide
Exactly.
whether she feels like she.
Yeah,
can
she just
still-
wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
we all felt she feels like she's maybe not doing as much as some other members. And then does that create discomfort amongst the committee if she's not doing as much as other ones?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And will you have a
Awesome.
discussion?
I'll
Perfect.
talk to her.
Okay, perfect. Main topics for discussion at the meeting tonight, and again, in the essence of time, really, Kendra's gonna kick me. We're really gonna try to be out of here by 9. And the topics that I see are what's on so far, Chris Haggerty being one, Josh representing the baseball league as another. We need to briefly discuss, I think, John Scott's bid for BrownsCt. I think we need to discuss town meeting, the article that was proposed. I would like to talk about it. If no one else does, that's fine. And also Fran had brought forward a draft of a possible article for Times Inc. and possibly a flyer.
Well, the front porch forum.
Front Porch Forum. Oh, excuse me, all three, maybe?
Well, we were talking about the front porch forum first.
Okay,
because that's
so,
the one that gets out the quickest.
okay. So does anyone have any other information that they want to update us on? for this meeting.
And then I've also prepared the budget of costing that we talked about for this meeting, however far we get into it.
And by the way, Kendra did get us out by 9 o'clock.
She did.
I'm proud of you. Okay, so let's go right on to Chris Haggerty. Chris, can you, just for the people that might be on, can you just introduce yourself and what your company is and what you've been tasked to do for the people that are new to the meeting tonight?
Sure. So I'm Chris Haggerty with Button Land Surveyors. I don't even know where I'm looking. to look
Okay,
at.
they can see you. I can
yeah.
see you. They can see
Um,
you.
And so we were hired by the town of Richmond to do a boundary retracement survey of the athletic park on BrownsCt. At the last meeting, we presented a very draft version that plenty of research was left to be done. It's work in progress. What we're sharing tonight is hot off the presses. We literally just assembled this afternoon. We were in the land records all day yesterday and Friday, as much as we could be, to kind of button up things a little bit. There's still some stuff that needs some resolution, but I think as far as boundaries are concerned of the park, I believe we're done. So to recap, the northerly and westerly boundaries were a pretty hokey description from the early 1900s, and it's rough. It refers to maps that are not recorded in the land records. Yeah, that's
So this one?
perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. So we've outlined in yellow those boundaries which were resurveyed by Lambro and Dickinson, I believe in 2006, that were presumably amenable to the McCarthy's, a boundary agreement boundary agreement by quitclaim was suggested by that surveyor at the time. We found no evidence that ever happened, and that remains. That hasn't changed. That's still the same. It's just highlighted in a different color to show everybody those boundaries that have, and just to recap, those boundaries in yellow were a combination of taking that hokey description that calls for markers that are no longer there, or trees that are no longer there, or features that are no longer there, and trying to fit that to ancient evidence of fence that they found back in 2006. And it was their best fit at what they could come up with. I don't disagree. I mean, you could come up with 10 different scenarios, but I think the simplest path to resolution is to hold what that survey had in 2006. So that's what that boundary is. Most of our work in the last few days or week has been focused on a number of other conveyances that we found that went to the village of Richmond that were pertinent to the park, but we needed to know where they were. And so this is probably only interesting to a surveyor, but as you can see on the easterly boundary of the park, there are 3 rectangles. We wanted to make sure that those didn't impact any of the abutters. And so we need to show the world that when somebody 50 years from now pulls, volume 16, page 121, and they go, did they know where this Village of Richmond parcel was, or did they totally miss it? This shows the world that this is where we think it was. And that's based on measurements, calls for abutters, and so on. And so this shows you how the athletic field grew over time. So the westerly line that would be formed by those three rectangles is the original boundary of the park that was, 1911. That's the original boundary. And these other things were added on over the years. And then they become a moot point when that infamous Constantine deed quitclaimed everything from the ball field fence west to the ball field. So that's what strikes that our now current easterly boundary, which is for all intents and purposes the same as what we presented at the last meeting. That line has been struck in the sand, but we wanted to be absolutely sure that none of those extraneous parcels that went to the village were affected or were outside of that quitclaim deed that was executed. So that's where we think those are. Everything actually fits together fairly well because these descriptions were born out of somebody looking at a survey that was done in the 1905, 1906 era. So unlike the really early Richmond stuff down here in the village downtown, this had all been surveyed. So when they start calling off these distances, these arbitrary 116 by 45, it actually makes sense. Like it actually fits on the ground because it was surveyed. And although those surveys are lost to the passage of time and were never recorded, it actually comes together rather well. So that's the park itself. The next thing that we were wrestling with is the boundary between the park and the residential houses on BrownsCt. Where is that boundary? Now we know that there's a survey of that was done in the 40s. Lane's aware of that one. That created the lots basically where BrownsCt takes its turn. This is the beginnings of that subdivision. It goes from here up lot 1, and then all of this is BrownsCt extension. And depending on which deed you're reading, that could be Baker Street extension back in the day. The older part of BrownsCt is referred to as the athletic drive. Athletic drive, the road to the ballpark, the road to the athletic field. It's been there since the underwear factory owned all this. This all came out of the underwear factory. And we wrestled with how to put those abutters, especially with this line here. Where does that go? There's a historic fence back there that was reputed to be put up by the Ball Field Association many years ago. It's old, but it's not referenced in that survey. And so when we do our best to fit this survey, which is absent its depths from BrownsCt, and there's a profound difference between where that map puts BrownsCt and where BrownsCt is today. Those are two very different things. But as evidenced by these markers down here, other ones across the road, folks and subsequent surveyors have largely leaned on the physical location of the road. Great. So what we did is take that map, what we have in common with that map are some markers, the Lamro work that was done here, and this line, the south line of the original BrownsCt was established by that map. And so we know that to be 40.1 feet here. That establishes a very important corner. The northeast corner of lot 1. This is lot 1 right here. So that is the westerly boundary of a 40-foot strip that we don't know what happened to it. We've tried to carry it forward. I believe title may rest with the underwear factory. I don't see it. That's something else to wrestle with, and you're getting into the Browns and the Burnett's and what happened over time. I don't believe that Brown, when they did their subdivision or any subsequent carve-outs, ever had title to BrownsCt, the original strip. The reason that's important is because, as Jim and I spoke at the last meeting, there is question about, at the last meeting, we were questioning whether or not this park even had frontage on BrownsCt. That's been hashed out for the most part, and it does. The question is that orange hatched triangle there is a hokey little description that comes from that is a third parcel that makes up Jim's lot. He's lot 1, half of lot 2, as well as this triangular parcel. Now that triangular parcel is supposed to be bound by the ball field, bound by the road. And if we switch to that other image, the 1962 black and white photo in the background.
This one?
Yeah, you can kind of see, like it's not super clear. But that's what it looked like then. And you can see the ball field orientation. Look familiar, Elaine? And the backstop parking area.
From high school.
From high school days. And a road back there. And so what you can surmise from behind, in the background behind that orange shaded triangle, is a pretty good little chunk of grass that I think that they were maintaining back then. And I think that probably was the intent. Now, to move things along and not get mired in the details, I do question whether or not that is a town issue or if it's a park issue. Because it remains to be seen whether or not BrownsCt is a municipal property. Now, it likely is, and that would be if the town attorney renders an opinion here. I suspect BrownsCt, the road and all the utilities contained within it, fall under the essentially the ownership of the public however, the 40-foot strip that it lies within, we don't have clear title to. We never see that the underwear factory conveyed it out to the village of Richmond. We don't see that it went to Brown. We think that Brown went up to the south end of BrownsCt, the original section, and then over and included all the lots they create as part of the subdivision. So I don't think it's Brown's either. So that makes me question whether or not the existence of that triangle is very clearly described as being starting at the northeast corner of lot 1, where you can see the little white dot where we show their rebar to be set. It explicitly starts there. It goes to the road, it goes down the road, and then back to the east line of the original lot 1. Again, there's 10 different ways of putting that on the ground or putting it on paper. That may be an issue either for the town to resolve with
Carol and Oliver.
exactly. And or that may be an issue for the town to finally take over BrownsCt as an official highway. But regardless, it doesn't have any bearing on the location of the park boundary. So I feel compelled to depict that and bring it to folks' attention. Because it does have, it may have an impact for future use. The curb cut for the park as it relates to the road. But as far as the athletic green boundary, it doesn't change anything there. So, and to answer folks' question, I kind of skipped ahead. We have that old fence that runs along back here. We did a second search after our last meeting. We didn't find any of the markers that were called for on that survey. I suspect that's because of ditching and work that was done back, if they were ever even set in the 40s. Because it's not uncommon to not have, they aren't the original lot corners. These are lots plus half lots. So unless somebody came along or there's a subsequent retracement survey, they haven't been reestablished or may have never been set. My conclusion on where that was originally mapped, the intended location of that common boundary with those 3 lots 1, 2, and 3, is north of that fence line. Fairly consistently parallel with it, but about 5 feet north of it, 4 or 5 feet north of it. So probably doesn't matter a whole lot to the town, probably matters a lot to those folks to know that that's the case. We can't say whether or not we're granting them their record depth off the road or not, because the depth isn't really listed on those lots. And B, the road is in such a profoundly different location than where it was originally mapped that you couldn't say so anyway. So I think that's fairly digestible. I think that's a fairly good conclusion there. So I think that brings everybody up to speed. We have a working acreage now, 3.13 acres.
And that's usable,
Nope,
No.
that's what's within the red and the orange boundaries there.
which is what again?
Total acreage, 3.13. And I would estimate your workable acreage to be about 2.2, which is largely bound by top of bank, tree line, setbacks, that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of your working
So
flat ground.
banks, tree line, and setbacks.
Setback, yeah. Trying to think if there's anything else to report.
Are you setting any pins or?
Yeah, so everything with the little white circles up there are to be set. So we will set those when the time is appropriate. It can be any time. I would suggest having the agreement in place with the McCarthys first and making sure they're all on board with that before we set markers. Alternatively, if they'd like to see and to view it and know where these corners fall in space, it's a little arbitrary on a map. We can go set those ahead of time and it's it takes time to set them. And so if there's any chance that they're going to move or there's going to be, maybe they don't want that big triangle there, maybe we want to take this top of bank and slide it this way, or, that projects out into the flat area, but there is a little bit of a draw there. So what if they wanted to slide that this way? I don't want to set that corner if there's room for negotiation there, but anyways, there are, and this is that's a pretty major corner right there. We didn't get into the nitty gritty of that, but these two lots to the north, were surveyed by Terry Harris, I think 2002. And he appropriately applied that quitclaim deed that went to the old ball field fence, which had just been ripped up not too long before he showed up. There's still evidence and people to talk to about where it used to be. That same fence should have gone all the way south to BrownsCt. That's kind of what he was holding. We did a combination of granting, what are they? This lot here, is that 30 BrownsCt? I think that's 30. Granting them their record distance on BrownsCt, what they're supposed to have.
That's
which-
the Laura Murray
Yeah,
parcel?
yes, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Granting that we're splitting hairs here to
Yeah.
surveyors, this much matters, but just to put it out there, they're granted that all of the record frontage on BrownsCt they were supposed to have. So and the only other thing we added, we had touched on up in the northeast corner, way up here is that record easement. Oh, who was that? Was that Bennett? I guess that was Bennett that granted that to the town of Richmond for the sewer that goes through there. It's currently sewer underneath a very well-used path.
Okay, that's the path that comes from the
Yep.
school.
Exactly. Yep,
Is it appropriate to ask some questions now?
absolutely. Fire
You want-
away.
You want to go first? Do you have a question?
So, the path goes to Burnett Court, not to the school. right?
Oh,
Well, it goes to, exactly.
right, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yep.
You're-
So if I were to look down at where that triangle is, to the right of there's an entrance into BrownsCt that is a legal entrance.
Well, I know, so sure that, and in fact, the triangle, like, because it lacks some of its distances, it comes to, how do you interpret the words "to the road"? Now, in surveyor jargon, often that means to the right of way. So like, that might be applied to Route 2 or West Main Street or something, to the road, if you have, corroborating evidence to back that up. In this case, BrownsCt was not, there was a road there, but it wasn't like a municipal highway. There wasn't necessarily a right of way associated with it. It was just a road and access to the athletic field that was largely centered in a 40-foot strip that the underwear factory owned. So in this context, to me, in the 1950s, when they say "to the road," I'm kind of looking at this 1960s photo and going, there's a big green strip to the east of the old garage there. There's a fence that went from it to the park. Like, I'm kind of thinking it kind of everything east of that is kind of that, maybe what they intended. Now, the bigger question, again, I don't want to get into nitty gritty, but when that was conveyed from Brown to go into the chain of title for lot 1, did Brown even have you can't sell what you don't own. Did they even have the rights to sell that? Technically, if there's a triangle to be conveyed that is in that vicinity, it should have been coming from the underwear factory, not Brown. I don't think Brown had title to it. So that may be a discussion for another time, but if it comes down to access and widening or improvements or anything to do with the current access going in, that's a discussion to have for sure.
With the Carol.
Yep.
Mary Claire and Jim.
Exactly.
So, a question, I have a couple of them, I was writing as you were talking. So is the survey that the McCarthy family had done, do you agree with what they had done?
That,
With what Lamro and Dickerson
Oh.
did?
yes,
So,
yes, I think it's appropriate. They didn't cover that area though.
Right, right, right. They just
went
did
down
their
in this road.
property.
So
So
all,
they typical, hypothetically, they should have no problem signing the quitclaim deed if it's exactly as,
exactly the same.
exactly the same. Okay, so I think
It
that,
looks different because it's different draftsmanship and so on. It's
right,
the
right, right.
exact same line.
Going back to the triangle, is the Carol Oliver property, have they been mowing that parcel?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
okay.
did good history. You got.
yeah,
history.
okay, I just, and is there a
Probably
thing?
to the road itself, right? Like not,
And I don't know if you know this answer, but legality, is there eminent domain after you've taken care of the property for so many years?
funny you should mention that. So that's definitively a legal matter, so not a surveyor issue. But when it comes to unwritten rights, yes, there are unwritten rights that can ripen into fee title, but it requires a judgment. It doesn't just happen.
I see.
You have to meet the elements, and that's an attorney's job, is to come up with, does it pass the test for the elements that have to be, such as the amount of time that has passed, what kind of occupation was that?
Okay.
Now, you can't occupy against a municipality or government agency. It's a different thing.
Gotcha.
Now, that's why I kind of wanted to know who
Yeah.
owns BrownsCt. Like, that's why I got into what, the town, there may be, the legal doctrine of acceptance and dedication of the street and its utilities within the street itself, say, some logical offset from the street itself, say a foot off of edge of pavement or a couple feet off of edge of pavement. That may be what kind of the public, by use and by nobody saying any different, that strip may have ripened into municipal ownership or a public easement over a 40-foot strip of land. But outside of that, may still be with private title.
So that little triangle again, I've got, trying to get my arms
Yeah.
around this, that little triangle, has anybody been paying taxes on that parcel to the town of Richmond?
I believe it's tax map as such. I think if you look at so you'd have to look at the grand list acreage. And does that grand list acreage actually is that acreage actually what is drawn on the town parcel map? So to answer your question, I don't know exactly, but I do know that the way the parcel map is drawn, it goes around, it makes it look like BrownsCt is like this perfect 40-foot wide little street that comes down and goes around. And that's appropriate from a tax mapping perspective. So they take center line of today's road, they offset it 20 feet, or in this vicinity, 22.5 feet. And it creates an arc here that is between the right of way, which we don't think exists. I think it's just, it's always been used as a access to the subdivision. It creates this area that I think, yes, but that according to the parcel map would be part of what they'd be presumably taxed on.
So let's backtrack one even more so. Did you do any research for the property to the left? If I'm looking at it,
Mhm.
are they paying the exact acreage that they think? No, not that one, the Carol Oliver.
Oh, this,
Do they,
Oh.
they're paying the exact acreage?
I don't know, because I didn't calculate their acreage. I don't know what
Okay.
I do know if I had all the research with me.
Right.
I'd
I'm just
roughly
wondering
tell
if
you.
they've been paying taxes on the entire parcel, including the triangle,
Yep.
all these years, or have they not? That's my, I guess my
I
next question.
I bet they have. I bet that the way the parcel map is drawn goes down here along the road, goes up to here and over. So like it's included within the polygon that's on the tax map. So whether or not that polygon on the tax map
Okay,
is that acreage that we would roughly come up with, I don't know. But yeah, it should be one and the same. Now, the approximate acreage of that is approximate, like, because
how big do you think it
hasn't
is?
really been surveyed. I wouldn't care to guess.
Okay, and then one last question, and I'll open it up for the rest of the committee. What year exactly did the baseball field, when did it go from, whether it was the underwear factory or all the different people, when did the town get that officially?
Oh, of course, I don't have the research with me. I think ball field proper, the most of it is 1911. Some of those.
So did it go to the Baseball Association?
No, is that what it was?
I think
It
so.
was the
Okay, Baseball Association. I just want to make sure my verbiage is,
But I think we have. Baseball-
what was the other
If you
family
go to
name? There were
Theodore,
the
the main part
Browns.
go to Theodore Bresser first, and then he conveys not long after to
J.W. Barry was involved in.
Barry was one of the trustees. And then,
Constantine.
well, Constantine was in a butter and
Oh,
they
okay.
they clean all this up, all this business on the east end with all these blocks and everybody's adding on to the park and the pasture and all. They cleaned it up. They had a fence here. They go, everything west of this red line here.
So
goes-
plus or minus 1911.
That was later. That was, let me look. So those various chunks, starting from the north, the northerly rectangle, that's 1914. The little rectangle here, it's all on the map too,
Okay,
1914.
perfect. I'll look.
Props to Gil Nor from our office who cranked all this out with very little time this afternoon. And let's see that this 200 by 50, the biggest parcel here, that's 1913. And then the quick claim that sealed the deal and got rid of all these interior chunks, they well, effectively go away. Nobody cares about them but us, but this red line becomes the boundary in 1916. And that is a fence line agreement between Constantine and Barry Miller, trustees of the Baseball Association. And then, if I remember right, I mentioned it at the last hearing, a good chunk of it doesn't lie with the trustees. A good chunk of this gets conveyed to actually the village.
That's right.
So-
Yeah.
Right,
The village
so,
trustees, I think.
so
did
it
that.
was, although it was a mishmash, by the time, all of those miscellaneous rectangles, those all go to the village of Richmond. They don't go to the trustees of the ball field.
So am I correct? And I said it was the last question and it's not. Am I correct? Does the town of Richmond own it? Because it went to the trustees?
Definitely a legal question, not
Okay.
a surveyor question.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any questions on the table of the committee?
Yeah, I do. Well, it's like, so the town really has two issues that they should be addressing.
Mhm.
Talking to McCarthy.
Quick claim deed with McCarthy.
Get that all set.
Mhm.
And then talking to Mary Claire and Jim about figuring out what to do down.
What would
there.
that be called with Mary Claire and Jim Oliver?
Honestly, I just call it a boundary line agreement or something, like it's, the deed calls in that triangle are iffy enough and leave enough to be, subject to interpretation,
Okay.
that I would just clean it up naturally. You have the opportunity to do it now. Now, whether or not the town of Richmond is the proper executor of that remains to be seen, because that may not be land. Just because you quit claim that to them to clean it all up in the boundaries, doesn't mean that the town,
Owns it.
yeah,
But if no one's paid taxes on that parcel, the underwear factory hasn't paid, and they've been out of business
yeah.
for 100 years.
Oh, yeah, and their entity changed.
Well, the
you know.
only issue would be if somebody whom we have no clue who they might be, might contest.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, the town could quit claim its interest in that, in some variation of that triangle. That's great.
Yeah.
It doesn't, great. So town has no interest. The likelihood of anybody else coming forward is pretty slim.
Yeah.
But the reality is it probably would probably never be an issue, but it doesn't change the underlying fact that the town, I would argue, has all the legal interest in the road and maybe an offset therefrom. Outside of that, may
Gotcha.
need cleaning up.
Okay.
And property owners of lot one are the ones that we should be. working with.
Yeah. Jim's aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about that at the last meeting. He's aware of it and, yeah, it's too bad that the Brown subdivision that really covered from that triangle west and south didn't really get in, you know, it would have been awesome if they just depicted where they thought that was. It wouldn't change the title issue, but, or ownership, but what did they mean when they described this thing? Like, it's like, what do you mean by road? You mean the edge of gravel, which it was at the time? Like, I don't really know. So yeah, yep.
Fran, any other questions?
No, I'm
Can-
good.
Can I ask one more? Chris, the little dot on the left of where the road comes into the triangle, do you know how approximately how many feet that is? Yeah, the other dot, that dot, and where the triangle begins,
Oh, it's about, has to be 30 feet.
30 feet.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect,
So that's a fair amount.
perfect. Okay, any other? Lane?
I just a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you please identify yourself for the record?
Lane Marshall, I'm a resident of BrownsCt. And I didn't know the road didn't belong to the town, so tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
Would I be, am I assuming too much to assume or to think that that town would be 3 rods? Yeah, assuming it is a town road, is it a 3 rod?
That section of Brown's Court, so we'd be talking about the first, the due east-west section, the oldest part that brought you to the park and only came to here.
Right,
It's not, by nature of elimination. So when this lot is the lot to the north is created, it's bound by a 40-foot strip that's left there. And as well as we were helped by Brad Holden's research, he did the retracement for the Willis parcel on the south side of Brown's Court. He found the same thing, that all of his descriptions for everything, this parcel, the Willis parcel, and the former reservoir parcel that's out at the intersection, was the reservoir for the underwear factory. Those all are bound on the north by a 40-foot. They begin, that strip has a frontage on Jericho Road of 40 feet. So I don't, it's a weird thing that it's not in the absence of a survey bill or some kind of layout. This, it's really just a strip of land with a municipal road on it, you know? So I don't think that like the 3-rod rule really applies to it. Of course, the rest of it that, you know, we sorted out is once this is, so Brad was fortunate enough, I think only one of them is still there. That marker right there, that's shown on that map. If you look at that map, the map of the Browns Court subdivision, when you open that thing up all the way, it goes all the way to Jericho Road, and it shows that as the south boundary of Browns Court, the original section, the 40-foot section. Those markers were still there. They were on that map. So that's solid evidence of where the south line, and that's what we've done. We built northerly 40 feet from that. South of that, from here down, from this point heading south, that's all 45 from the map. Which, yeah, go ahead.
When I was a kid, it was called Athletic Street.
Yeah.
When I came back, it's Brown's Court. Did they do any surveying when they did that or changed the name or?
Not that I've found, not that we found.
Could it
no.
have changed when they put the development in?
That's probably,
That's-
it was
No.
Athletic Street then,
Athletic
Oh, it
Street,
was.
when
All my growing up,
it changed when I was in the army.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I just was wondering if there was any survey.
Yeah, I definitely have seen, yeah, but no, to answer your question.
it's probably if you went back to some old select board minutes, that's probably where.
When they won the pennant or something? Josh,
So I just want to ask a question first on the
Yeah.
road. So you're questioning whether that is a town-owned road ever formally adopted as such?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know, I mean, it's kind of back to the Williams Hill question, right? We have to go back and find the original layout.
It is,
Except it's not a class 4 road, the town has maintained that for probably some.
that's just
So
it.
that's where there is that maintenance of it by the town, which would then eventually become a town road.
That's right. I don't,
Or something like
I think
that.
it meets different requirements in that it was Yeah, you have long-standing use by the public
Right.
through a
Maybe-
40-foot strip.
And maintenance by the town.
And maintenance by the town. We just, I mean, yes, we could spend the next week in the land records going through everything Brown and everything Burnett and everything Underwear Factory for that matter, because that's who our last known grantee is. To be absolutely certain, we kind of did a cursory look yesterday. Brad Holden did too for the Willis, but he arrived at the same point that all the maps, all the deed descriptions point to it being a 40-foot strip.
I sent that to you.
We do have a dedication to the village of Richmond for the rest of it. That's 45 feet. Yeah, once it hooks and heads to the south, that part is clear. That means from Brown to the village of Richmond. So,
It may not be the point that we need to do it.
it may not, I mean, I thought for sure we were gonna find, being that it was called Athletic Street or Athletic Drive, that it went with, I thought any number of those description of all these village rectangles, I thought one of them was gonna be it, was gonna be a 40 by 294 feet or 394 foot depth that got you to lot one, that was it, but never found it.
Josh, would it be appropriate if I asked you a town manager question?
Sure.
I mean, not before town meeting, but after town meeting, could we get those 3 items on a select board agenda? Adopting the road as a town road, number 1. Because our paid surveyor that the town hires agrees with McCarthy, could we possibly get together and have a quick claim deed signed? And it sounded like she might have already had it drafted
This is for the property.
from McCarthy's.
Is that, which one is that?
It's in the orange, all the orange boundary.
She owns all
And
around.
that's not the road issue.
It's the
that-
ravine
let's
and,
just Clarify that.
Yeah,
boundary.
right.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
and then number 3, which might be a little more difficult, finally come to a resolution with the Carroll / Oliver property. And that's the first one by the triangle.
Yeah, I mean, we would definitely need some documents to help first, but I think that would be good to put on there. And then we can explore the road. I think that is a legal question, but I think since the town's maintaining it, I think we don't need to
Right.
find the original.
I
right
just-
now.
I know we've spent money with Chris, and I know the McCarthys have spent a lot of money, and they want a quick claim deed as well, because I'm sure they'll be selling in the next few years.
No, I think that those 3 things we should definitely look at.
Okay, thank you. All right, any more questions from our audience? Any questions from our Zoom guests this evening?
We have the one in the chat, it looks like, it was asking about where the underwear factory was. Somebody answered that it was at the Goodwin
Baker Building, yep.
And then, oh, they just also owned this parcel up on today's BrownsCt too, ? Interesting thing.
Yes,
So I don't think anything more to be said on that, but
Half the village,
yeah, they own half. the-
west of Jericho Road and north of West Main.
Right.
Okay.
Wonderful. And I hate to put pressure on you, but I'll let Fran take over and see if there's any updates on volunteers.
Yeah, so
Volunteers.
this is kind of pushed that to the side
I'm-
a little bit.
I'm sure.
But we're obviously really close to getting I'll do some final looking over this tomorrow, and then we'll jump into the volunteers green stuff.
Perfect.
Is
Um,
that a easier process?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, none of this,
No
yeah,
deeds.
there's no deeds.
And
No,
Chris,
it's
just so
simply
you
elevations.
know, Fran is the lead on that.
Okay.
So if you could, when you do emails,
Yep.
if you could do Fran and then just
Yep.
CC us.
Sure.
But she's the lead on the volunteers green on the elevation.
And the elevations are, like from river level or?
So what we did with the backup with us is in the office. The field stuff is done.
Yep.
I sent Joel from our office went out and did a topographic survey of kind of capturing the break and slope and the floor heights of the bandstand and the corners of the bandstand, edge of the sidewalk to kind of get some known elevations on what those are. Now we need to compare those. What we'll do is calculate, I call it, I know Richmond knows this all too well, the base flood elevation of that particular spot. So it varies depending on your relationship to the river, upstream or downstream. So Gary Bresser's house might be different than this spot because it's downstream a little bit. We calculate that That's the dreaded height that FEMA says that 100-year flood is going to reach. And now we can compare for that elevation, what is it higher? Is it lower? Because when you look at like the FEMA flood maps, it doesn't, whereas like Gary's house, it shows an island, and appropriately so. It is higher for sure. On the other side of the river, the only high spot that's really captured by the FEMA flood maps is really where Bridge Street leaves the bridge and starts heading down, and that's it. It doesn't capture it's not. The preliminary findings from FEMA would indicate that the whole bandstand level area up there that is higher ground is still in the flood zone. But what FEMA uses to generate that are LiDAR contours. They flew the river like 2010, and then, we kicked those maps around in 2011. And although the LiDAR is really good, like it's a much better representation of the ground. What it doesn't capture are those breaks where it heads down, that top of slope isn't captured well by a LiDAR flight. So what we're hoping is at least, ideally would be awesome if we could say, the general ground on top of here is just barely higher than the base flood elevation. More likely it's going to be close or just below it. And what are the fixes that we can present to do that? Can we, under Richmond's current FEMA regulations, can we use, so let's say it is below and then therefore it falls under our flood hazard overlay district regulations. Does that mean, bound by those rules, can we use fill from another part of the Volunteers Green to bring it there and raise it up? What hopefully is not a extreme amount of volume, right? I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this forever recorded, but that is a premise that if obviously all of the Volunteers Green is in the flood zone, some of it's in the floodway, but if you move material from one part of a flood zone to another part of that same flood zone, you are not decreasing the net carrying capacity of floodwaters. You have taken from here and put it here. So we have used that as a tool in other Richmond flood permitting type situations. So that may be, that would be plan B. If it's not, if we can't find the existing grade is above the official base flood elevation, what's the recourse? Can we bring it up a little bit to get it above it? Or, or just for simplicity's sake, move a playground from here to here and say that it is still in the flood zone. We're making a bad situation better by moving up to higher ground. We know that it's still in the flood zone. We're going to take proper construction techniques to make sure that things are anchored properly instead of fixing it every 5 years when it gets flooded down here, and do that. So,
May I, Mark, please go ahead.
Hey there, I just wanted to add the caveat that our current zoning regulations strictly say that we cannot add soil to an area to bring it out of the flood zone. So you can move soil around within the floodplain to do different things, but you can't move it around with the purpose of taking it out of the floodplain.
Thank you.
That is a Richmond thing. That's not a FEMA thing.
right. Because Richmond has adopted some of the more stringent tiered rules from FEMA. But the argument can be made, do we really care if we raise it? It could be more of an engineering question that this isn't a single family house where we're looking to remove flood insurance requirements from that structure. This is kind of a different scenario where we want it to be in line and permittable by Richmond's regulations. But do we really care if it is above the base flood out? We're just trying to do practical construction here that according to FEMA's numbers might make the most sense. I don't know, but it's all
Oh,
to be hashed out kind of information. So.
we'll
thank
hold
you.
our breath.
Yeah, no, don't.
Any other questions while Chris is in the room?
Thank you.
Chris,
Sure.
on
Oh.
behalf of the committee, we all want to thank you. You
course.
answered tons of our questions. You've helped us understand the complexity of the issues.
Yeah,
And it's been wonderful and we appreciate your
Good, yeah,
help so
thank you.
much. And one other question, can you be in contact with John Lynn? He
Yes.
asked, as soon as you had that, if you could
Yep.
send him the documents so he could update his.
absolutely.
If you could do that,
Now
that would
it's-
be great.
Now it's shareable, so.
Now
we'll
it's
do that.
shareable.
Yep.
Okay, so you'll take care of that.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you
Yep.
so much.
Very
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for all your hard
Thanks.
work,
Very welcome.
putting up with the neighbors. No.
Oh, we're on the, well, I'm not gonna say anything.
Okay.
They're
We
across.
didn't get yelled at, let's put it that. way.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Okay, I think, I just would like to say a comment right now. Jay, Jay for our select board chair, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I know I saw you in another meeting. So I think we should go back to Brown's Court, the summary of action items needing completion to be able to bring a proposal to the select board for the park. Kendra, would you like to take over at this point?
Sure.
Since
So,
you've done all the heavy lifting on this?
I don't know if it makes sense yet if we want to talk about the kind of budget for BrownsCt next, is that amenable to everybody to go there?
Yeah,
Does anybody want to
we-
update?
So you
Know
can see the
what's,
numbers.
what's missing.
Yep. I just don't want to get into something that you weren't ready for.
Kendra spent hours this
This
weekend
is broken
doing
out
this.
by park, by project, with companies, with multi-quotes, all the notes. So it goes park, project, cost, the company, any comments on it, additional quotes, and then an maintenance of each with a comment on if there will be required maintenance, how often and how much.
Can I ask a question? And I don't know
Yeah.
how you've done the data. Is there any way that we can just strictly look at Brown's Court?
That's just BrownsCt here at the top with a subtotal here.
Okay, perfect.
In,
Can you want to go through
we
it?
get rid of the
People?
people, the viewers.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys want to ask a question, please yell because we want to see the big picture and hopefully, but if you have any questions, raise your hand or yell or stop us.
Gonna minimize it here.
Okay,
perfect.
thank you.
Okay. So just chime in loudly if you wanna speak, because we can't see your hands raised.
And, you weren't able to put that one in, were you?
I'll put it in right now.
Okay, so there's one that I just handed to her. I thought I had forwarded a quote to her, so
Well, the
She's-
one thing that we might want to consider is, this one is the outside quote and whether
inside,
heat
absolutely,
would be different. So we'll
Absolutely.
get to that.
yeah.
So
if-
it starts out
We don't
with-
even have to talk about that one tonight.
With the tree removal, and I just pulled the individualized ones, Fran, because they were individualized
Yeah.
versus the lump sum. But I mentioned here on each of them that there is a lump sum quote for the 3 parks.
Fran, do you want to just quickly explain what they're going to do at Brown's Court and what you found when you went there?
Well, at Brown's Court, it was, I have to think about it a little bit, but
I know, it's been a
number
while.
one was to go around the whole park and remove any low hanging branches, dead branches, dead trees to make the park safe. Then up in the northeast corner, there were a couple of trees that if we were to put any kind of pickleball tennis court up there, there were a couple of trees that were really overhanging. So it was either 2 or 3 trees that they would remove. So that was really, as far as trees,
And wasn't there a couple dead ones already on the ground that they were going to clean up as well?
yeah. Well, there are branches hanging over the backstop, just as you walk around the perimeter of the park, there are a lot of hanging branches. And if you look up in the trees, dead branches. So, it would be making the park safer
Mhm.
for people to be up
And
there.
cleaning it up.
Yeah.
And
So, okay, the next two items kind of are a grouping one because, and I put a box around them because it's sort of one or the other. We don't have the space for both a pickleball court and a multi-use court. And so that's why they're boxed here together. And then I added a note here that this quote for the multi-use also didn't include excavation. So should we want to keep that line item on here, we would need to add in the additional cost of said excavation. And
can I
then.
stop and ask you a
Go ahead.
question? I mean, are we at a point on this committee that right now we choose 5 or 6 so we can move forward? I mean, I'm ready to vote tonight. I don't know if everyone else is. I'm sorry, Jay.
Totally cool. Talking to Bard, he noted that tennis was more popular on the survey than pickleball. And he would prefer a multi-use court or tennis over exclusively pickleball, just tossing it out there.
Okay,
I think when writing up the thing from the front porch forum, we kind of wanted to leave it a little bit open
Mhm.
fair enough.
for any input.
Yeah.
Even though we here probably know which way we would prefer to go, that gives us,
Mhm.
Martha and I raised her hand.
Thank you. Go ahead, Martha. You might be muted.
Martha, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I just, tennis has sailed. Pickleball is the future. And if you want to invest in something that's rarely used anymore, go ahead. But pickleball is taking over the world. Tennis is dead. Oops, sorry.
No, thank you for your comment. I appreciate that.
I think we need one more time, to move on just a little bit more before we,
Okay,
even though we probably
I-
are all leaning that way. I
Okay.
think,
just keep it
I
in.
agree. I think that we need to also, we'll say, we've talked about it, Tess, with putting together the stats and kind of our presentation and our why. And before we make the final decision, I feel like we need to have presented to ourselves the
mhm.
why of those stats to ensure that we've done our due diligence and evidence that.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
Yep.
So we'll leave this. And so like I said, I have these boxed so that then we know that it's kind of a one or the other because in the total, I think I did end up taking out the lower of the two so that we would know the maximum amount.
Okay,
The pickleball, we also have a numerous quotes that Tess sent over. And so I have all of these documents in kind of a main document file that outlines out all of the different quotes we have. So that's kind of the backup. And I just used the one that Tess has mentioned is the main one that she's had good contacts back with, good communications. much
highly recommended
information,
from
highly
Burlington
recommended.
Bocce.
Yep, all of
I
the
mean,
things.
Burlington.
So that's what I used. If we decide there's a different one we want to use, that's just the one I used. So, okay, so the piece that if we're going to keep this on is we'll just have to figure out excavation for the multi-use. Next item is the bocce ball. And I pulled this estimate from when we had our conversation with Lewis and Tanner when they came here. That's the estimate that they gave us for 2 side-by-side quotes was about $22,000.
Yep.
And just so that the community knows and anybody who's listening and or for the record, these 2 gentlemen presented, one is a local resident. The other gentleman, I believe, manages the Burlington Bocce.
Yes.
And Tess had really done research. Did you get 3 different quotes?
For the bocce court?
Yeah,
Well, I have been in contact. I haven't gotten direct quotes. I got I
Estimates.
basically have that estimate. Burlington, Oak Ledge told me what they paid back in 2016 or 17. And they said, we couldn't even begin to tell you what it's gonna be now. I have been in contact with Livingstone Landscape, which is the one that John Lynn recommended. He wrote back and said he wasn't sure about the time. He asked me about, when we expected this to be done. And this is where I was gonna ask anyway. It's my understanding that from the town of Richmond and ARPA project criteria list, that the money can be allocated by CYE 2024 and then can be spent by CYE 2026.
Has to be.
Jay, could you, instead of digging, I know you have this memorized. It has to be allocated by and spent by, I'm sorry?
It has to be allocated by December 31st of this year. It has to be spent by December 31st of 2026.
2026.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we've got-
December 31st, 2026.
Yeah.
But if
Okay.
we got approval, it could be spent immediately.
Okay.
Is that true?
That's
That's a
right.
true statement.
The money we have, it's not where we would have to submit a proposal to the feds and wait for a check. The money is in our account right now.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. So thank you. The presentation that the two gentlemen did last, two meetings ago was pretty amazing. And they also said that they would be here and supporting us. And was there also a possibility of a grant from the club?
Yeah, I would be a little bit reluctant in doing that.
Okay.
though.
Does it come with strings?
Well, if you go down to Oak Ledge, that they have signs around saying these bocce courts are restricted during these hours for bocce club members.
Oh, gotcha,
So
gotcha.
I'm
Okay,
I'm not
good-
sure. you wanna go
good to
there.
know. Perfect.
Yeah. That's always a potential, I think we could evaluate down the line if they wanted to have a club in order to help maintain said courts, right? That's what he mentioned, is that it sort of self-maintains then. So that's part of what I put over here too, just as to make sure we're talking about that we have put in here for, maintenance. I used, to go back to the courts, the pickleball courts, the written estimate that we were provided was this 12 to 14,000 every 5 to 7 years. And that's what I used, was the higher amount over the longer period of time to create an annual. And then secondarily, for the bocce ball courts, they gave us an estimate of $2,000 to resurface said courts every year.
I don't think they would need to be.
I didn't think you said every year. I don't remember.
That's what I had in my notes.
That's what you had in your notes. Okay, I don't know.
If we get an actual
Yeah.
quote, we can
Right.
replace it, but those were the two pieces that I have in here for those two.
Okay. When Lewis came to our house, we were talking about it. And I said, is that done every year? Because he said that it took 8 bags of this special kind of hard pack stuff. And he said, no, it depends on what kind of winter you have. but
Gotcha.
How
I don't
much
think
of
you
it
would know for
rises
certain,
and
so at a
falls
max,
and
we're trying to be
and fills in.
conservative.
And he also said that at Oak Ledge, and I guess I didn't pay much attention to the surrounding area, but he did say that there's a slope that comes in. So they have problems because they have water.
The water running off the hill.
from that-
Yeah.
from that
So it
hill.
could be even every other year or something like that. I don't know.
So just so the audience knows, the select board has asked us to also come up with a line item for maintenance, just going forward, because that's where our parks got into trouble now, that they weren't being maintained. So they've actually asked us to come up with a line item for maintenance going forward, which we are trying to do.
So then the next piece we have would bring us to some numbers from Josh with the softball field. This was prior to the one that you just sent me. So I can look at that if that's more appropriate.
As I'm reviewing the one that you sent you, I realized I copied the low numbers for field restoration in the BrownsCt. I shouldn't have done that.
Okay.
Because there's no FEMA money for BrownsCt.
Okay,
So
I think I used,
you put in 44,000.
40.
I grabbed your middle for all of them. I grabbed your mid-tier plus, I think I did fencing and I didn't include anything for dugouts until we had conversation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. for
So
BrownsCt.
middle 30,000, 14
Yeah.
for, oh, you did a lower number for fencing.
Fencing came down. a little.
Okay,
I did
so I'll
get-
fix
I did
that
get
then.
a report on fencing. But yeah, no, I think that 30 plus the 12 would take care of the field, and that would be completely replacing the fabric for the fencing, so if we did need to cut some money,
Okay.
we could cut that down probably by another 7,000 or so. We could still get some patching on the fencing if anybody needs it.
Okay.
The 30,000 that I think would be the most important for field restoration. Fencing and dugouts would be sort of nice to have, but not have to have.
So you think if we did just the patching, it would be,
I sort of estimated like $5,000 for that.
$5,000.
I'm not, I mean, that's sort of a shot in the dark, to be honest.
Just to get it back in shape.
Yeah, and fencing courts were sort of hard to get. So I got two, I didn't really get, like, if we just did some bowed out sections, but I'm thinking if we had probably need something with that to address any worse stuff there.
Okay.
And
So-
apologies for the revision, the other revision.
No,
not a problem. So are we comfortable for now with leaving this as
42?
the 42 with the midpoint of his fields and the 12,000 for the fencing? Do we want to consider dugouts? Do we want to push that off to,
I think we need to push that off. We're gonna,
perfect. I didn't put any.
Jay,
information in here.
can we
Go
stop?
ahead.
I
Jay,
don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy.
be that guy.
It has to do with the tennis and one multi-purpose court. They make winter, basically tarp-like covers for tennis courts to protect them against ice and stuff. I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I've been at people's apartments and gone, what the heck is that? Oh, they put that down every October 1st. While it's down, you can't place stuff on it, but it can delay the degradation of the surface of the court.
Well, good to
And
know.
I think they're about $2,000, but
That's good to know. And the multi-use court, and I'm not sure, I mean, I know the committee knows, but another reason I'm leaning against the multi-use is if we go from a multi-use and change it over to pickleball, I personally believe we're gonna need a recreation director and or employee to be able to say, okay, now it's pickleball time. Then they have to go and that person has to take all the pickleball stuff out and hopefully put it in a shed. And then then they have to, after pickleball's done and they want to play tennis, it's all going to be taken off again. And it just scares me because is that person going to be thorough about putting it away properly and making sure it's dry and da 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 da. So that's another reason I'm just leaning towards personally leaning towards the pickleball.
So to go back to where we were at with the softball field,
Yeah.
the only piece that I also then didn't have is any, we'll say, more regular maintenance than what has been generally done, and whether there should be something put in here. I sort of took the position of if we aren't currently maintaining it like we should, then we leave it at 0 for now, but because I don't think that should
But we
blunt,
haven't
count
been.
against us.
Exactly.
When we're
I don't
talking
think
about-
any of those maintenance issues, except for the new,
So that's the only piece that I'm a little bit on the fence of is what is being asked on the maintenance and whether, to be blunt, it'll be used against us if it says, oh, we need $20,000 a year to maintain these things. Then are they gonna say, no, we don't want to buy them because it's gonna cost in total this amount? Whereas these additional new things are where I ended up putting in maintenance for, since they're new items
Yeah,
and
I
so they have a
agree.
new maintenance cost.
I wouldn't put,
So historically, we probably put, and Little League is paid for clay at BrownsCt. Every 3 or 4 years, you put a load of clay out there, we have volunteers that spread it, the load of clay is, I think, roughly $3,000. If we wanted to get away from volunteers, I don't know how much it would cost to hire somebody else to come in and spread it, but it's minimal upkeep, I'd say, as far as minimal upkeep. So,
that's ongoing maintenance right now.
right.
Mhm. Okay. Maybe I'll leave it like that. Does that sound
Uh-huh.
most appropriate so that it's not really adding into a new
Right.
maintenance cost? But that for budgeting purposes, if they want to look at it as a whole, they can. Perfect. Okay, next item is some of these smaller items.
The
most-
shed.
So the shed was estimated last meeting. Jeannie said it was gonna be about $8,000.
And what she did is, she went and got a little box shed to put together. And I don't know, I mean, you have more experience with a small shed with shelves. Could you do it for less than 8? All right. So, I mean, it's high, but she just looked in a book. It was a X by X shed and it came as a kit for 8,000.
So we have that for now.
And we do have one there now. I don't know if it could be updated, added on to.
When we talked about this at the last meeting,
Okay.
that you were here, we talked about that one is placed over by where the softball field will maintain and stay. And so, and that is fully used by the softball.
Okay, and all their
group, and it's
equipment,
locked with their stuff.
with
and
their bases
all of
and
that,
stuff.
and
Okay,
this
good.
Other shed, the hopes would be to have it over by the courts,
Whatever they
bocce ball
are.
courts, et cetera.
Yep.
Over there for the equipment related to those and the maintenance related to those, and have that, we talked about at the last meeting, kind of how to maintain said shed and who would have access to it. It was thrown around that potentially it would have a lock that had a code, that the code would be posted on the Richmond website. And then
Mhm.
somebody would have to go and just,
Right.
it would, I don't know what that was. If it was needed that the public should have access to it, then that would be the easiest way to do it. And then somebody wouldn't just go in there and be messing around. They'd have to go to the website, get the code. It would require them more steps to just deter issues. However, if it ends up being that shed is just to maintain, well, to hold maintenance needs, then it wouldn't necessarily be needed to be accessible to the public because it would be maintained by somebody else. So it sort of depends on if we go with the multi-use court, then more of that stuff potentially has to be accessible to the public to be able to switch the types of court versus the pickleball court would just be set up and you wouldn't need to have anything day-to-day access in that shed. So what that shed will be needed for is still kind of open-ended.
Right.
We also talked about potentially having different accesses at the library for like checking out equipment if you want like paddles or whatever is needed for said sports. You could maybe check them out at the library and have them be maintained and held there. Okay. Then we have the benches that she quoted was $6,000 at the last meeting.
Yeah, she's gonna look for
Yeah,
the ones that she's been looking at are replicas of what we have at the round church. And those are expensive.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily need to have that matching benches over at BrownsCt.
And I just want to make sure I am correct. The benches that we're talking about aren't the softball
No.
players' benches. These are benches for people who might be walking their dog, having lunch up there with a friend, or waiting to get on the pickleball court and or a multi-use court and or after they're walking, just to be able to sit down, take a break, enjoy the sunshine, have a drink.
yes.
Don't worry about the pickleball people. We bring our own folding chairs.
Good. Water fountain, I'll take this one. I had given a verbal quote. I was talking to a gentleman who's principal with Bread Loaf down in Middlebury. And he said, this is the company they always use. They hold up amazing for the general public. And it's a 3-tier water spout. It's a place underneath at the bottom where dogs can get water. And then the top is people can actually get a drink and you can also fill your water bottles. They're pretty cool. I have a picture of one. I haven't actually got a physical quote from the company, but all their prices are on their website. And he recommended a certain company and I'll have to send that to you again for the company. That's top of the line, nicest one. The water, is right there already because there used to be a water fountain there and it's right as you come in and it looked almost like it might be in that triangle.
I don't know if it was a water fountain there.
It was,
Good.
it was,
With a hose with a tap on it.
Yeah, it wasn't really,
it wasn't a fountain,
wasn't a.
but I guess the water's right there all ready to go. Do you know anything about the water there?
Only when you told me.
Okay, so it's all right there and he said it's easy to set up.
And so I
Or
don't
maybe
know,
Pete Goslin was the
Pete
one telling us,
Goslin.
Pete Goslin was telling us.
and I don't know about the maintenance though, of whether that in any way.
If, I'm
needs
sure it
any
probably has to be
winter
covered,
monitoring.
It has to be turned off.
turned off and probably covered for the
Yeah,
winter.
and, I think some of these things like benches and water fountains may end up being nice to have
Mhm.
and maybe, down at the bottom,
Mhm.
because this list is getting high.
Right,
Yeah.
and it was everything it possibly could
Yeah.
need. It was,
This is everything, so that
this
we
is
can then
everything.
cut from there.
All right,
Denise.
yes,
The water situation. Is
yes.
there any place that you could attach a hose to this new water fountain?
Oh, good question.
Because with the bocce courts, it's my understanding that you water them down and pank them down.
Oh,
So
okay,
having. yeah.
good to know. Can you just put a note so that we know? Hose access, and you need a hose access, or the softball needs a hose access for the fields, right?
There's not currently one. If there was one, that would be phenomenal.
Okay,
I mean, that'd be.
'Cause
that'd
I
be
know
nice to have
to spray it
for those
down.
Dry needs to put it down, yeah.
yep.
Next item I didn't have a quote from was the cedar trees.
I've been trying to track, it's the wrong time of year to be
Mhm.
tracking down anybody, but one place on their website said was like between 4 and 7 feet tall trees would be about $50 each, because these are cedar trees, but these are not,
Babies.
they're not what you would, they're meant for the type of thing we're gonna use them for. They're not prime landscape trees. I mean, they would be nice trees, but if you went to Horsford, down in Charlotte, for a cedar tree, a singular one, you might pay a lot more. So there, used to be someone that advertised every year in the summertime in the Free Press of cedar trees. And they're not advertising now. And there, of course, there's nobody in advertising at the Free Press that you can call
Oh,
and
and get
say,
an old number.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try, I would have to go to some service that handles all the classified ads now and say, by any chance. So I'm
Mhm.
still working on
Yeah.
trying, but I would say, I was
As an
figuring
estimate, the 50.
several
$50
dozen cedar trees at $50 a tree would,
You're thinking like 24 trees, 36. What are you thinking for a number?
that, let's say 36, just
Okay.
so that I'm hoping that would be high. Because you would only have them maybe around 2 sides of the pickleball courts, and then possibly some near BrownsCt,
Mhm,
the road.
mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Parking lot. I contacted, Chris Spence, and I contacted John Scott, and I contacted Hutchins. I've had great conversations with Chris Spence and John Scott. I left a message with the person that does the quotes for this kind of work, and he hasn't called me back yet. I have to follow up on him. We've received, and I'm sorry, Fran has contacted
Aaron Gladden said.
Aaron
I
Laddick,
spoke to Eric.
and you
Yeah,
spoke to
or
Eric.
I need
So
to-
we've asked for 4 quotes. We have one in. We're not going to say the total of the quote yet because the other 3 have not arrived. But we do have a quote for that. But also, I just want to note, in talking with Pete Goslin, he said he loves doing projects like this. And, going to you two, I mean, is it okay if we talk with him and say, how much is it going to be? Because, it's another option.
Yeah, and he's a lot cheaper than bringing somebody outside.
Exactly. So that, but we wanted to get the quotes just to know where we were at, and what we had envisioned was a 20 space parking lot, and John Lynn gave us the exact, with Jay's help with the handicap. So we would have 1 handicap and probably 18 or 19 other spots. It wouldn't be paved. It would be, bulldozed down or whatever they do, and then crushed stone, leveled out, and then posts in between with maybe a plastic chain, just so that people would know where to park and where to stop. And we have some pictures of, I've been showing them pictures when I would meet with them up there for quotes. It's like, this is what we're thinking. And so that's in the works as well.
So I would take John Scott's quote, take his name off it, take the price off it, but take the specifics
Mhm.
of what he said he would do
Oh, perfect. Yep.
and
Yep.
ask Pete.
And ask Pete. That's a great idea. Maybe we should wait till I know there's two more at least coming in and possibly a third. So maybe we should wait and combine them all. I thought that John Scott's was very organized and very detailed. Did you agree, Fran? Or
Oh, yeah, yep. And that's what you want to know, that they're not just gonna,
Mhm.
exactly.
I was gonna cost 20,000 to do a parking lot. It's nice to know what they're gonna do to build that parking lot.
Okay, I won't. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Got it.
Portable bleachers, Megan's gonna still work on that, no update yet.
Hopefully Friday, it's been a long.
But we only just met last week, so, and then the bike rack is the last item for BrownsCt, which, Jeannie gave us a quote of $1,250. We discussed that we thought that this would be helpful. We said that maybe Pete had some bike racks around that would be
I would
able to
ask
be
him,
used.
he might have one out
instead.
back.
But it's on here. Like I said, it's literally everything that you guys have sent me. So, it's got all the aspects. So that is the end of the BrownsCt piece.
And look at the number.
So look at the numbers, they're terrifying. And this does take
They're
out,
terrifying.
take out the pickleball court, as the lower priced court option.
Mhm.
Again. So we have a
Kendra,
few
we
more
only
bits and
have
pieces.
450,000.
You don't want to know what the bottom line is right now. It is.
Okay.
We prepared to move then to the round church budget, or do we have other things we want to discuss?
In the essence of time, do we want to table that to I'm just asking, do we want to table that to the next meeting and talk about?
That's the easiest one. I mean, we don't have to talk about it tonight. That's the easiest.
It's basically the same numbers that we've already talked with, the trees and the grass and the replacement and then the fence.
And yeah, would be whether
Thank you
The
both
nice
for
to
coming.
have.
Thank you for your questions.
thing at the bottom.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the interest of time,
Yeah,
the things we
thank
have
you.
left is we're going to talk about, the post for Front Porch Forum. Just to talk about what's kind of remaining, to see if we want to move to something else. Basically the Front Porch Forum post. Are there other things to talk about?
Possibly just have a discussion about the article that may appear for town meeting. I don't know if you guys want to talk about it.
Well, I think we should talk about the front of posts.
Mhm.
for the front
Let's
porch.
push to that, and then if we have time to circle back to more of the budget discussion, we can. If not,
Okay.
we table it,
And
but you won't be here.
Since we have two gentlemen in our room, I just want to make sure that we're not breaking any rules. We do set on this committee, what we would like to do is do a post on Front Porch Forum and also maybe a flyer and maybe even so a post on Front Porch Forum, maybe something in Times Inc. and, and we're not getting into politics. It's just stating the
I
facts
did make one change.
of what we were charged to do.
Is that the one you sent me this morning?
Yeah. I
um,
made one
oh, look
more
at-
change.
John Lynn just sent you a link to Craigslist for the trees. Yay, John.
I did get,
I made one more change.
So
I-
I just want to make sure, I
Okay.
know you've been in contact with Secretary of State's office a lot lately. And I just want to make sure we're not overstepping our bounds and that we can do that legally.
What is information post about what you've been working on? and-
Yeah.
How we came to be, what we've been working on.
Political part. so.
You're listing proposals, you're detailing your research.
This is a very rough draft right here.
Right,
Yes.
you're not saying we have decided.
Oh, no,
No.
no.
And that's the thing, is you're providing information about alternatives.
Well,
Exactly.
because we've, not here tonight, but, one person, Jesse, who's come a couple of times. Keep asking what kind of public outreach are we doing? So, this, we just looked at this as a way to, this is what we're doing. If you don't,
Yeah.
if you see some comments on the front porch forum and don't understand what the committee is about, then
No, I think it's a good idea. I get, every so often, as you guys probably know, I get long-winded and post a 5,000 word explanation of something that I'm going, well, I'm used to this, but the town, unless they're watching the meetings, they probably don't. And I get all these emails from people saying, thank you. Honestly, I think people would really benefit from having this, because right now, there's so many people in town who have absolutely no idea what's going on.
And we thought we'd put our names as committee members at the bottom with our phone numbers and or emails. So if they have any questions,
the question would be emails versus,
phone numbers.
so under Brown's Court, I made one change that's on here, but not up there,
Okay.
which would be, in the parking lot for those, where it says 20 cars for those who use the park for any recreational activity,
Yeah, hopefully they won't be carpooling.
rather than listing anything.
Yes. So
With you said character count, will we have space to have all of us listed at the bottom?
I'll have to, I didn't try that, but it would be our names and emails versus phone numbers. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, are people comfortable with their email address?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I just worry, and I'm an advocate for the elderly, and I just worry that I know so many elderly people that don't have computers and don't know how to even do an email. So I think, personally, I think phone numbers, so they can pick up the phone and call you and understand.
Well, they're not gonna see this anyway,
Oh, that's right, from Porch Forum.
but do
Duh.
we want to send this into the Times Inc. As,
I think we should. I'm sorry, Mark, do you have a question?
No, that's fine. You guys, great points all around. I was just thinking that, that with this much information, it might be helpful maybe to break it down into smaller pieces and do lots of front porch forum posts rather than just one big one. And I'd also recommend probably posting the same thing multiple times. Because I mean, I try to stay pretty vigilant to the front porch forum posts, but it's tough to keep up on. And so you don't catch them all. So to reach out to as many people as possible, I'd recommend multiple posts. And I think if it's too much, sometimes it's very informative for people who are really focused and have a deep dig, and that they can, spend a lot of time reading a large post. But also there's something to be said for small bulleted conversations, like introducing yourself to the community in a couple of emails or posts saying that this is your mission, this is what you're doing. Stay tuned for more detailed information.
I like
And
that.
follow that up with maybe breaking it down by park, and again, posting that in multiple episodes so that more people will have a chance to see it. And there's a very, very good point about contacting folks who are not on their computers and don't do front porch forum in order to be as broad as possible. I love the idea of Times Inc. posting, and I don't know how they would relate, whether it's a paid posting or an information bullet or community interest storyline, but I would reach out to Front Porch Forum, Times Inc. and see what they can do without having to pay for advertising per se. I think it's a big community effort, and I think it affects all of the communities, because what we're doing in here in Richmond is going to benefit all of the surrounding communities, and they'll have an interest in it. And I hope that Times Inc. recognizes that and says, oh, this is a public interest story that we want to spread to all of our communities rather than a paid advertisement.
I think what Jay said about long posts, and I think when people go on to read it, if it's really long, sometimes they're like, oh my God, I got too much to do. I can't be reading this right now. And then they forget to go back. I like Mark's comment because right now, if you look on Front Porch Forum, we've got a little campaign going, and I had nothing to do with it. I know you didn't. I know you Save Our Park. And I don't even know who used it first, but I think it's adorable. Save Our Park. I think that if this is my opinion, if we do, I love the first paragraph. Where did we get the money? How much was allocated? I think we should mention 1.2 million, is that correct? Was given to the town of Richmond. And a motion was made that, you know, give us 450 to get the parks back into shape. Introduce ourselves and the committee. And then the next day, have them all ready to go. The next day, we hit BrownsCt. The next day, someone else. So we see many different names. The next day we hit, oh, did you know that there's the possibility of a full use court or bocce ball and pickleball? And then did you know that we're, you know, Jeannie may be doing the playground? And then talking about, I think people have a right to know how much work has been done by Chris Haggerty to see all the work he's done, and letting people know that I think the two key things, the acreage is 3.13, usable is 2.2 acres. That's what he,
2.2, I thought it was 2.1.
2.2, he can't,
Said today when
Oh,
you.
2.2.
yeah, it's 3.13 is actual acreage, but there is only 2.2 acres that you can actually use up there. I think that is like in that, you know, introduce us, tell us how we got the money, you know, and I know some people are going to say, give the money back. I can't afford it. It's free money because of COVID, you know,
Every town does it.
every town and school.
And counties, I mean.
I would,
You're on the top.
Yes, Mark.
I'm sorry, I hate stepping over people like that, and that's one of the things.
Oh,
with Zoom.
stop. It's fine.
But I think that's really important what you're saying and laying it out like that. Just one other courtesy I would add is like I said, if you're going to repeat these posts, it's hard to do that, but it might be valuable to you know, title each subject slightly differently, and when you repost it, just sort of identify it as this is a repost that went out on, you know,
Oh, that's
January 27th, so that people aren't like necessarily, oh, I'm going to get new information, because even if we try to be succinct, we're going to end up, you know, these are going to be decent sized posts as they are from Porch Forum wise. And so if people know, oh, okay, I already read the last one about Volunteers Green, this is a repost. Oh, good to know. All right, I already read that one. I'll look for the next interesting one.
And I think people are being inundated with Save Our Park. And I think some people don't even understand what's going on or what's happening, you know, and I think that we should introduce ourselves, tell them who the select board appointed to this committee. And then I think we should hit BrownsCt and exactly what we want to do with it.
I probably have a different opinion.
Okay,
I just think now let's introduce us. Let's introduce what we're working on right now. Then as we get closer on BrownsCt, another post that talks about how the more specifics that we're gonna go with, for pickleball courts. And, but I think initially to lay out the parks we're working on and what we're doing, it's not any specifics. That would be my preference.
mhm.
And
I-
then
okay.
I don't have time myself to
Right.
keep doing
Mhm.
posts and
Oh, totally.
managing post. So for myself, I'd rather right now post this one, and then after, our meeting in a couple of weeks, if we are really honing down on BrownsCt, this is what we're gonna present to the select board and talk about that. When we have more information about, none of these are terribly specific. But when we get the results, of the elevation study, then we're gonna know more about what we might be proposing for volunteers green. This just gives people an idea of what the committee is about, and we're looking for input.
Mhm.
If you want to go a different way, then I'll turn it over.
So-
to
Can I,
Okay, go ahead.
as my opinion, I sort of agree with Fran.
Mhm.
And this is why. I understand shortness of posts and I understand like the ease of it. I also feel like we want to be presenting in its, entirety at some point what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish and all of that. Because with the idea of having different people post it and all this different stuff, it's hard to then align the people, all those different people posting are then the same committee trying to accomplish the mission that is set forth of this committee. And so I sort of feel like some of that gets lost and some of the whole concept of ensuring we're having transparent public input gets lost in all those miscellaneous posts. This isn't really a campaign. This is an informational posting to provide the information, reach out for public input. So I feel like I agree with Fran that the initial post should be this detailed, should be this bulky. And then the follow-ups would be, keep an eye out for our follow-ups. We're going to be sending out frequent updates at this point, kind of thing. And from there, you then add the level of detail that you're looking for and what Fran's talking about. You say, oh, we found out that the field is 2.2 acres of usable space and all of that. I just feel like it puts it all in one place and all in one summary that these are all the things we looked at. If you put it in separate posts, it's potentially making it sound like it's an either or
It's gonna get confusing.
or that it's not all of the above trying to kind of be done by the same group with the same mission of spending the same amount of money. That's my position. And so I lean with Fran on that for the initial post at least.
This will just get people talking and they'll look, and people who are already interested in this.
Okay. I'm fine. All right, Fran, Tess, do you have an opinion?
I agree with Fran. And I'm wondering if there's some way that, I think when we post our emails or telephone numbers, I think we're gonna get a lot of questions. And I'll probably be answering a bunch on pickleball courts versus tennis. And I'm wondering if in some of our posts, if we say, I had 4 questions about pickleball versus tennis, and maybe I should use Front Porch Forum as a way to say, this is probably on other people's minds as well.
Oh, that's a great.
And
Yeah, that's a great, this is a question we received, blah, blah, blah.
And feel free to attend more meetings.
Yeah.
For public comment.
Right. Okay. Do you mind if I do one thing? John, can you hear me? No, he's not. I just want to let him know that they're forwarding all those documents. Okay, so do we want to run down and change anything? Okay, this has been a very thorough presentation. Thank you. Nice work. Thanks for tuning in, Lisa. We appreciate it. Okay, so Fran, do you mind putting in the fact that we got 1.2 overall?
Yeah, I can rework the beginning.
Okay, and then that was allocated to us. And then and I know you're pressed for keystrokes, but I guess I want to let people know that the select board appointed us. The 7, but you know where it says 7 members? Is it possible?
It says that. It says in September, the select board appointed 7 members to a committee.
Right. What I'm saying, after 7 members, should we do it then or do the names at the end?
At the end.
Okay.
At the end.
Because you want to put email addresses and it's easier to see.
And they can. I'm just thinking for ease of like potentially characters, you could also, I think all of our emails is on the town website too.
They're only yours and
Only mine and-
Denise's are.
Okay.
If we could get all of our emails on the website,
You just shoot them to Duncan, he can go up there.
then
Not everybody wants
that's
up
all
there,
I have to say is contact.
Okay, so on the second paragraph, when you said that we've been meeting approximately every 2 weeks, could we just say something like the minutes? And I mean, at Zoom meeting, I know she's working on,
Or I meant to check to see whether our minutes were.
The minutes are up there.
the minutes are up there, so that, maybe you just say, minutes can be obtained at whatever our website is.
Yep.
If you're worried about character account, you could just take that whole URL, copy it, paste it into your post and say for minutes
Mhm.
and full contact information on the committee members like here.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And then, but you can't like hyperlink a word, public form weird like that, but if you cut and paste the whole link, it'll hyperlink. Does that make sense?
I
Does that make sense?
If you do the rest of the wording and send it to me, is everyone okay? We had talked about it last time that I would do the post, and so if that's the case, I can do that, add that at the end if, or you can post it. It doesn't need to be me. But I'm happy to do it and add the hyperlink if that's something you're thinking it's.
Okay, I'll rework it and send it to you and.
But I think the first one should come from Fran. I mean, because I'm thinking that just because of your years on the Volunteers Green Recreation Committee.
Sure.
And
Do
you're,
you want to just send it to me and I can put the hyperlink in and send it back to you?
Sure.
all
Is
right,
that- Is that helpful?
Yep.
Okay.
but committee, just know, I'm gonna do one and I will send it to you as a courtesy first.
You go even hot, I have to wait right now.
There you go. Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks.
Copy of this.
But we have to get it updated with Duncan.
Yeah, but the one.
It's okay though, by the time it.
Okay.
Stay the same and all emails
Okay.
something right now, that's, I think he has one, you know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
Yes,
on
yeah.
our own sheet. So I'll just ask him to add that and I did, so you guys don't have to worry about it. I'll take care of it now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Right.
You're gonna do posts?
I'm gonna do a post, but I will give you an update first. And I just want to let you know what I'm going to talk about. But I will not do anything until I send it to you and I want your comments and be honest. But I'm going to talk about the acreage. I'm going to talk about that we've owned the land since 1911. So that's just a little, I just want to give it some background history for the people that came before us. That's what I want to talk about. So, and the village trustees, that it was deeded to the village trustees initially. And so that's what I want to talk about. And I'll draft something and get that to you and please, and give me comments, whatever. But I'll definitely wait until this is out and maybe even a day after so that people can digest this first. Okay.
Awesome. So that's the posting. Fran, were we also
Can
talking
we
about
do the
having?
parks I know this is such a stupid thing, but can we do the parks alphabetically?
Sure.
Browns Court, then Round Church, and then, and Fran, that's what you want to do.
That's how I presented.
Yeah. And then I also would like, because I've lived here and I thought I was pretty much in the know. Fran, I did not know we did not own the parking area to the Round Church. And I have talked to so many people, they had no idea.
Well,
The
we-
sledding hill,
Oh, we own,
the
the
Richmond
town-
Historical Society
we
does.
own the Historical Society owns the flat part and part way up the hill. The town owns
The green.
Round Church Green and grass around the Round Church.
But I think that's an interesting tidbit. I was shocked that first meeting when you said that, I was like, I never knew that.
We bought the two homes, the Historical
I
Society
remember.
that were there as they came up for sale, and then we rented them. And when I was treasurer and subsequent treasurers, we paid off the mortgage. Paid off the mortgage, then the homes were really they were habitable, but
Yeah,
they weren't.
I
in
remember
great
them.
shape. We did just demolished them and made the parking lot
It was a
so
murder.
that when there were
Murder.
weddings in the church, we would inconvenience the neighbors
Right.
a lot less.
So, I mean, I don't know if we have room in the document, but I think that would be so cool because I know people don't know that we pretty much own the green. And that's it. So I don't know if you can or not, but
That might be a later,
okay.
The post on
later.
what's being done, more detail. One other kind of nuance is maybe where you have it bolded for Browns Court, maybe you call it Browns Court Park.
Oh, yep.
Put the park on there.
Yep.
So, and then the other question is, do we want to do some kind of Times Inc. post consistent with this?
I think we do this as a post in
I
time.
mean, I can send this as a letter to the editor.
Oh,
I think that
perfect.
that's perfect.
Perfect.
Uh,
Perfect.
Okay.
You don't mind?
No,
A lot of work for you.
well, I.
It's
Done.
pretty much done.
Okay.
Taken me,
So that
sat my chair by the fire one day.
so we're all in agreement and kind of approval of this draft with the tweaks and things like that, in case we need to have an agreement here as a committee post.
Yes. I think we need to get, Jeannie Agner's, send it to her.
She has
On
sent me comments.
Okay, perfect. But I mean, the latest edition so that they see it, so they have a copy by their computer
Yeah.
before it goes out. And as well as Mary, can you check and see if Mary's okay with it?
She has sent me comments. as well.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay.
Perfect.
So that's sort of the last agenda item, aside from if we wanted to continue talking about the budget or table that for our next meeting. Thoughts?
I would like to table that budget and talk about town meeting.
Second that.
And that's just a comment of mine. I don't know how you guys feel. There's 5 of us sitting here. Tess, Megan, what's your pleasure? Fran?
Let's talk about it.
I'm not gonna be here, but I certainly think that people from this committee should be there.
I have verbally started talking to people and educating people. And I've asked them, please stay until the very last part of the meeting. Can I ask a question? How did it become the last item on the agenda? Or the warning?
And that was, when I had discussed it by the article with our lawyer, he suggested we do it after the articles that are actually taking action, and we put at the end.
It makes
The other ones, more meaningful to budgetary implications.
So I'll be honest and upfront. I think someone is going to, first off, I just want to make sure that we've talked to Secretary of State. I'm afraid in politics, someone's going to stand up from the floor and make a motion that we vote paper ballot. Do we have housing at Browns Court or do we keep it as a park?
Okay,
So my question is it legal to do that from the town clerk? I mean, I guess I'm not town clerk. Is it legal to amend an article from the floor that's been
the
warned?
article does not contain an action. So there's nothing to really
It's
amend
only,
as such.
yeah, it's only advisory.
But can it become an action? That's my question.
It's basically a straw poll. I mean, to be honest, that's what the article is. And I've been trying very hard to get people to not take it as some huge, big adversarial thing, because I think that, I mean, honestly, there's not a lot of people out there demanding housing at Browns Court. I think I'd like people to just basically say, does anybody really want to fight this out? No? Okay, let's call the question. I mean, that's what I'm hoping will happen. I would love to see us discuss, okay, that said, we're not putting housing there, but do we want to have action taken as a town? Do we want to tell Josh and Tyler and company, go hit the pavement looking for grants and incentives? Because I mean, they got plenty of stuff to do otherwise. But I don't want to tell the town staff to bust their asses scrounging for housing opportunities if the town is like, whatever. And that's what I think it's going to turn into. Everybody knows housing is needed, but the people who have housing are like, it's all good, I got mine, which is kind of sad, but that's how a lot of people.
Well, at this point, we know housing's needed, but also when you're looking at the state, they're looking at going up 17 to 20%. Then you're looking at the town going up
Education,
5 to 7%. And then this, and then you what, you got the 20-year thing just came out and they're gonna be $15 to $20 million bond vote on water and sewer. Affordable housing in Richmond? What about me? Where's my affordable housing going? This family's been in this town for 9 generations. You're gonna boot us out because we can't afford to live here anymore? That's affordable housing.
It is a concern. The town's proposed tax rate increase is only 5%, and it wouldn't be that if we hadn't spent $500,000 on flooding.
And Jay, I'm not talking about you. I personally am so nervous about what might happen. And I know you say it's a straw poll, but things have happened at the select board meetings that have scared me. And I know you have not been a part of them, but they've scared me as a resident, as a former politician that has served our town in Montpelier.
There are some people in this town who want to watch the world burn, as the phrase goes, who like to spread rumors and gossip and not the actual facts. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but that doesn't help the discussion. What I tried to do, if you saw my post to French Reform today, was basically try to make it extremely clear that this particular select board member has no hidden agenda, despite what some people in town may think. I think I laid out a pretty good case. It's not really.
The post was amazing.
It's not really suitable for housing. The only reason it's being mentioned is because we want to keep our options open, but the time has come to fish or cut bait. That said, this is the one time we get this many people in town together at once. What do y'all think about, do we really want to invest in trying to recruit housing here, period? The thing we've got to remember is we will never be Williston. We will never be South Burlington. We do not have the space they have. We have a river on one side with a floodplain and we have hills. Where are we going to put a massive housing development anyway? You know, it's like, I feel like sometimes we're discussing this. I should end the discussion by saying, well, as long as we're making wishes, I'd like a pony. Because I don't think the option is there for anything large scale in this town. But we get asked, we've got a housing committee, we've got people talking off and on. Is this something the town thinks we can tackle? Or is it going to be something where we just say, hey, Sarah, and get on with life? Because I agree with you, Megan, it's terrible how people who want to downsize, they have this big old house, their husband's dead. Their kids moved off. They want to sell it, but there's nowhere for them to move to.
My daughter said to me the other day before she left for college, real second semester, if someone had told me I had to buy a house to live in my hometown in 3rd grade, I wish they would have.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it's giving people who already live here a place to stay living here. The kids who go off to college and say, I'd like to come back, but where am I going to live? That's what really kills me. I don't have kids, so this isn't affecting me personally. I just don't like to tell people there's no answer. So if we can push auxiliary dwelling units, we can push duplexes. I think that's where our effort really has to go, because that's one thing we can do.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'd like to see people in the town talking.
The idea is to try to not make this confrontational
Yeah.
and you have to take a vote. I mean, there will be a vote. It's not compulsory that even if they pack the house, it's only advisory. You can't change that.
Okay.
What we're looking to get, what all the select board has directly or indirectly said is, we're looking to basically, for once and for all, is there any sizable number of people in town who really want to push for housing? No, okay, move the hell on. I think this is going to bury it 6 feet deep for the time being, and then you'll have the clear go ahead you should have had 6 months ago.
Thank you. Mark.
Yes, I just wanted to say, I don't know if you guys are aware, but the planning commission has been talking extensively in the last several meetings about housing at Jolena Court. And the idea of bringing in at the minimum another 31 units, bringing it up to 45, which is the original zoning, or modifying that zoning and bringing it up to, over 70 units just on Jolena Court. So, as far as Richmond's share of affordable housing, and our responsibility as a town to contribute to that, you're talking about bringing in possibly, another 100 people, adding 2% of the overall town population in housing at that one unit. we're also looking at, and how you feel about that is another issue, I guess. But we're also looking at adjusting all of our zoning regulations to promote more housing and infill. Some of that warranted by the new state law that came through this summer. But and there's a lot being done for housing in Richmond outside of BrownsCt. Maybe we need to make that more of a topic to give people awareness that Richmond is invested in allowing and bringing in more affordable housing for folks. So,
Mark, I have a question for you. So based on our population and knowing that we already have 3 affordable housing developments in the town of Richmond, based on our population, does the state tell you as a planning committee how many units we should have in the town of Richmond for affordable housing?
No, nothing like that. It simply says that municipalities that have public water and sewer, which the village does, needs to have some pretty scaled down lot size requirements and the ability to have duplexes on every property, things like that. Like, I think the minimum, I think it's 5 units per acre is the maximum zoning we can have, or the minimum, depending on how you look at it now under this new state law. So it's really allowing for a tremendous more infill in the village. Of course, there's a lot of village residents who don't really want that, but at this point we don't have a choice because the town's mandating it. The Jolena Court property is in itself, without anybody else, at least another 30 units, upwards of another 60 units.
And does the planning, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Does the planning commission have any plans on doing outreach for like informational, like the accessory dwelling? Yesterday, I heard that if a person, like if I were to, as a landowner, put an accessory dwelling on my property, there'd be no permitting or little permitting process. But also if I were to rent that to someone that is considered lower income affordable housing, that after 5 years, if that person stayed there for 5 years, I would get a $50,000 grant.
I haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah, have you heard that?
I've heard stuff like that.
Yeah, I was told yesterday by the head of FEMA that if a person stays there for 5 years and is considered in the affordable income category, that the landowner would get a $50,000 grant back.
Things are evolving so rapidly at the state level that it's hard to track. But when we had every winter, CCRPC holds a legislative breakfast for every town select board member, and all the state reps and all the state senators and all the CCRPC people come, people like me and Bard go. And the number of things they rattle off having to do with here's something about housing, here's something about housing, here's something about housing. There's a lot of balls in the air.
Wow.
They did also put up a map that basically said, here's where housing could go. And as Mark just said, it's always along the water and sewer.
Yep.
And we have such a limited amount of that. And we're not extending it along the gateway. We just can't, there's no way we can do that without bankrupting the people who live there. It's
Right.
going to be such a huge cost. Jolena Court asked us a couple of years ago when June was still on the board for permission to go really crazy over there, like build 100 units or something. And the carrot that they offered us was they would make 10 units affordable rate for 10 years. 10 years, that was it. And we thought, not really seeing much benefit there. It's going to be, if we, as Josh has pointed this out to me, Bard has, if we put 100 units there, the only possible way we could get them in and out would be to have a road leading out of that complex into the town center parking lot. So there is a limit to what we can do there. The infill, the duplexes, the auxiliary dwelling units, I think we need to.
That's our way.
We have a housing committee. It's got right now effectively 2 people plus Virginia as an ex officio. One other thing I'd like to see come out of town meeting, out of this housing discussion is, hey, you, and you have a ton of clever stuff to say. You want to be on the housing committee? Because I'd like to get that. I'd like to get this conversation going. I'd like people to say, I did not know that. I've got this whole lawn here. I could put an ADU.
Well,
Can we,
I think we're getting away from.
okay, can we ask
Yeah.
John? I'm sorry. John?
Yep, sorry.
That's
That
right.
$50,000 program has been on the books for over a year. I've been signed up for it. The money ran out from the initial funding in days. And I've been on a list for over a year waiting for my ADU to be part of that, and they still haven't refunded the program. So it's been a hot topic, not just for me, but for a lot of our clients as well. But there's hope that there's money out there. Haven't seen it.
Are you talking about the accessory dwelling program?
Yes, sorry. Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a glimmer of hope for everybody. We've had a lot of interest on it on the architectural side, and unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of follow through that I've seen. Another worry on the housing side of things is the timeline and what it may represent to trying to find subcontractors. I think Baptiste sort of alluded to that when Fran reached out to him. On the building side of things, for our company, we're booked out about 2 years. I don't know how far out Baptiste is, but if we wait until December 31st of this year and try and find a contractor to work next summer, it could be kind of risky. We may not get who we're hoping for. So if this housing thing kind of pushes us back beyond the end of March, which was the original deadline I think the select board gave you, I'm worried that'll start to snowball into a longer discussion that will limit our options.
yep. John, I don't know if you heard me earlier, but Chris Haggerty is going to forward all the documents he presented tonight. You did. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Super.
love it. Yep.
Okay. Thanks for your comments.
One other point I want to just mention to you, Jay, since you missed Chris Haggerty's presentation, is with the 3.3, with what Mark just said, it means that it wouldn't be able to be 20 units like we originally had budgeted to be 15, just for the housing.
Yeah, and that's below the number that any of the nonprofits would get involved with.
Right.
Once you start actually looking at the facts on the ground, it ain't gonna work.
Yep.
And as the clock is ticking and this money spent, as was just said, it's not just the money, it's about being able to hire people to do the work.
Mhm.
Correct.
Because, that's why I really hope that we could just
Mhm.
wrap this up.
Okay.
So for the next agenda, can we just talk about anything that I should be including? Our next meeting, as mentioned, is on the 13th of February. And as of right now, the agenda items I sort of have are more talk of this budget. We won't have had a meeting day, so we won't have anything to move on really from there.
I would do a share of comments from the article. Because I'm sure we're all going to get emails and or phone calls, and maybe sharing so that if, like, say I got a question on the landscape or the tree removal, and I'd say, Fran, could you please contact Joe Smith because I couldn't answer his questions.
Okay.
And maybe a share so that the communication is spot on so that we don't leave anybody hanging with a comment.
Yeah, and it's more than BrownsCt. We're proposing possibly some major change down at Volunteers for the.
Oh, we'll likely have that survey.
Right. You might want to touch base, or I can touch base with Chris and see if he wants to come. And do you want another presentation on
He has something.
if he has it ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll know by then because he said he was going to be working on it in the next couple of days. So we can kind of have it. So Chris already served it. And then adding back on then the discussion of what to do with the park layout for Volunteers Green.
I think that's
Okay.
a full day. And I forget, and I don't have it in front. I mean, I have it in my stack somewhere, but the date that we're supposed to hear back on the playground.
We're sort of in holding because we need to know if we're moving it up to the top. If we're moving it up to the top, then it changes some of the quotes and arrangements because it's a different arrangement up there.
Right, I'm
And it would
talking
be
about when
below.
they're going to award
Oh, the
Oh, the
grant?
grant?
grants,
Uh,
the VORTEC grant, yeah. Mark, do you know when we're supposed to hear about the grant?
I don't think that'll be till this summer, I believe.
we may not know
Not
that
certain.
one.
And I'll find out next week during the, I think we're all having a joint meeting next week. The two different park rec committees. I don't know if you guys are coming to that or whether it's just Jeannie, but
Ends the meeting.
We'll have to check with Jeannie. She's our liaison.
She's on
gone.
vacation.
Oh, she's on vacation.
yeah.
I don't know that we're having a joint. I think we were invited to have some attend, and I don't know if anybody said that they were available to
I
attend.
don't think I remember, so, I don't know.
We talked about it briefly at the last meeting with Jeannie, but, and it went back and forth with whether we should be having some joint meetings. Then we would have to post as joint meetings.
But
that whole
like
back
one
and
of
forth.
us could go to that meeting.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have to be posted as.
Or
part
two
of the
could,
meeting.
yeah.
So when is it, Mark?
It is next Tuesday. Right, I think, Tuesdays and then Wednesdays, first of the month. First Tuesday of the month.
Are they held here? Or do they rotate?
Usually, they're always in Richmond if there's any physical presence at the town center at all. Sometimes we just do a completely remote meeting. But
Okay.
I don't
Let
know.
us Exactly. Whether it's Zoom or in person and a link in time.
Yeah, I think Duncan just posted some stuff like that, but I can make sure that whatever that announcement is gets forwarded out to everybody in the committee. I
Awesome.
do think it would be worth you guys attending. There's some stuff that I'd like to talk about, particularly about volunteers green that I think you guys would be very interested in.
Okay,
That conversation about, and I think it should involve both committees.
okay, thank you so much for, we'll look and you'll keep us in the loop.
Yeah, I'll dig that out now and forward it to you guys.
Okay,
I don't have everyone's email, Denise. I know I have yours.
okay,
And
if send it to me and I'll forward it to everyone.
That'd be great.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Been a pleasure working with you.
So Josh, I know we didn't have you talk about the baseball fields, but I think you resent me and I can add those in. And can I just ask a question for budgeting purposes?
Oh,
Everyone bear
absolutely.
in mind. So you sent over, and it said different things with you have two fields that currently have dugout and you have one field that does not on Volunteers Green. And so for budgeting purposes, I've been using his middle quote on the field, doing the fencing. And I've used the quotes of actually the fully doing the fencing for now. And then he probably will have lesser quotes if we want to just fix them up. And then he gave quotes that were, for the dugouts that you had like $10,000 for the dugouts you already had to do some maintenance. Is that, or just some bringing them better?
Yeah, you see the dugouts that exist could use some better drainage, and I might be able to get firmer numbers this week.
Okay.
Probably glad I might be able to take a look at those. So if I get that, I'll send you that update. But yeah, I think at minimum that would be really good for those dugouts.
Yeah. And can I ask a question? Are your quotes that you're giving us, are those minus the FEMA money that you're receiving?
So I created a second column. It's
Perfect.
Okay. And I'll actually quotes are due, bids are due tomorrow for the restoration of the field from the flooding. So hopefully we get some bids on that, and then what I put in there was like $5,000 as sort of an estimate of topsoil and a company to help spread that. That'll help really get the grassy part of the infield in better shape. That really wasn't even those were terrible before the flood.
Okay.
And that's sort of a ballpark estimate of my own, but you know, I might be able to get a better number on the dugout.
And can I ask, and I'm sorry, can I ask one more question? So I heard today with homeowners that if you've been paid by FEMA once, you don't get paid again. Do you get paid for municipalities more than once? If it floods again and again?
So, yeah.
Okay.
That road is flooded out before, so.
Okay.
I volunteered to be in sort of a new territory for us with FEMA. I've really asked for it before.
Cool.
I mean, well, sorry, the ball fields are. We've been reimbursed for the playground, for silt cleanup.
Right.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So
Mark, do you have one more question?
I'm sorry. No, I was reviewing emails and,
Okay. Perfect.
So for the budgeting, I will add in the dugouts upkeep for the two that we already have and leave off new dugouts the same as we did with BrownsCt. Just for ease of discussion and numbers.
Fran, I wanted to thank you too for taking the initiative to start the draft of the letter because you got us going. And I know it was a lot of work and we really appreciate it.
Welcome.
So anything else anybody feels we need to discuss tonight? Other than that, I will draft
Leave
up the
the
next
cruise.
round of agenda. Yeah, can I go? Just keep getting left
I told her
behind.
when she gets old like me, she can travel. And Fran says I'm not old. I'm like, yay.
With anybody on the phone, we have a couple people still there.
Anybody have any questions?
Needed to say, we didn't really have too much open public comment, but. Okay, seeing none, we'll call this meeting to an end.
I make a motion that we adjourn at 9:13 PM.
I'll second that.
I
All-
second it.
Favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, say nay. Nobody adjourned.
just kidding. Have a great night, guys.
Hey, thanks so much for attending. Everyone, we appreciate it.